It's going to happen again. It's going to go by. Yeah, it's busy. It just comes through kind of really loud through the microphones. Like these pick them up really well, so we don't need to worry too much. Yeah. And as I said, we edit, so don't worry. It'll look a little more natural. And what'll happen is instead of trying to pick it up, I'll just ask you another question, and we'll continue on anew, fresh. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully the editing looks good. I think this one will be Jacob. You got this, man. We got you, brother. Welcome to Culture BYTES Podcast. My name is Jordan Robinson, and I am the graphics and production specialist of the Indigenous Youth Wellness Team. And I am from Howsett, BC, off the west coast of Vancouver Island. And today I have my guest with me.
Nice. Hi, I'm Violet. I am joining here today, joining on the host nations of Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish Nation here in Vancouver. And I am from North Spirit Lake First Nation. I'm from Northern Ontario, Northern Saskatchewan. I moved out to BC a few years ago to start my school journey, where that took place more so in Syilx territory, and now I'm here.
Man, it's pretty warm over here, hey?
I don't know. I don't have my sweater on.
Yeah. Well, it ain't nothing compared to Saskatchewan, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How long have you been out on the west?
In like this area, the last just 2 years for school.
Oh, okay.
And then, before, even in the interior, it was a little cold.
Yeah.
Even more so recently, there was a few days where I was like, oh, it is really getting cold in the area. And I was like, wait, this might be winter. This might not be just like a week or two of getting cold. It might actually be just the winter.
Dude, it's a different type of cold.
It's a different
I'm freezing, and I had friends from out east just come out here, and they're like, it's not even like below zero yet, but it's the moisture off the coast.
Yeah. You feel it.
Definitely. Yeah. So what program are you currently doing your schooling in?
Nice. So I'm currently doing my schooling in midwifery.
Yeah.
I'm in my third year, and it's a 4-year program.
Yeah.
Because I have a background as a registered nurse, I was able to kind of skip the first year and then go right into the second year of the program. And now I'm in the third year. That was really helpful because even nurses can sometimes specialize and do say labor and delivery, which is its own 2-year training on top of being a registered nurse. But for me, I thought if I take the 3 years, then I can have a more so different role and work more so with community and Yeah,
there's a lot of new expanding roles, especially in the community, Indigenous community, of nursing and people doing community nursing. I feel like I find more practical nurses in the field than doctors available at least in the West Coast BC here, but I feel like that's the story across Canada.
Yeah,
especially for things like midwives and a lot of circling around doulas, midwives, and just birth and pregnancy, which is really I've been currently dealing with that a little bit. I'm expecting triplets, and I've been seeing an OBGYN, which is a different role. What led you to choosing midwifery?
Nice. And congratulations.
Thank you.
That's so exciting. I just what led me to choosing midwifery. I find this answer almost changes every time, because as I just kind of am in the role, I'm like, oh, I chose it because of this, and that's why it makes sense. But yeah, I think initially when I first kind of chose it, I just wanted something a little bit different. I wanted like a bit more meaning in my life. I was already working as a registered nurse, and I was feeling I was making different relationships and making relationships with like the host nations of where I was living, and even just hearing about people and not always having access to safe care, and just being someone that wants to like make that a bit better. And I make mistakes, and I'm not going to do that in every instance and always be like this amazing care provider, because like the journey is just learning. But I thought I could make things a little bit better for Indigenous people, and like different, just be able to like relate and take space. I tend to be more of a quiet person, so a little bit shy to be on a podcast, but because I'm someone who like listens, I'm someone who like can hear, and I'm someone who can take time for things, that I feel like there's the gentle aspect of people needed in those roles. And sometimes what's prioritized is like people who are like really like loud and outgoing and like take the leadership roles and just like really like put themselves forward. And I think that's like an amazing kind of person. But I don't always identify with that being that for me. And I just wanted something that was like a bit more, like just where I could also be gentle and be like appreciated, celebrated, and not just have to always be fitting in a role that doesn't overly fit for me.
Yeah, dude, I think it's funny because I was definitely described as the shy, quiet kid growing up. And I know it's entertaining because I am doing a podcast now, but it was the same deal. It was like, thinking about the louder I was spoken, this and that, and it's more of a self-confidence thing because I went back and looked at some of my older recordings and I was like, oh boy, I don't know if I'm cut out. but we're here, and I'm gonna like one of the things that I thought was awesome that you touched on is no matter what, we're destined to make mistakes. That's part of the human condition. Like failure is part of the process, and it's like if we correct or anything from there, which makes me think about that medical system and how it's changing now. The reason it's changing and reshaping and shifting is because Indigenous people do want better care. They do want more roles. They do want to be present because sometimes we felt like the medical system pretty much ignored us and many things like that because there's genuinely great people out there, and those who want to help. But I feel like sometimes, I don't know if you agree, is what we're looking for is familiarity. We're looking for a similar community in those senses, meaning like it would be great to see somebody else who understands the Indigenous condition of being a minority or being an outsider, and somebody who could just recognize you and see you, especially when needing help is like vulnerability.
So true.
Dude, it's like you're kind of at your weakest if you go to medical care in a sense. Not always, but like you're just being vulnerable. And that's always tough as is because, I mean, a lot's changed over the last few years with the medical system. And I love seeing it and I love hearing that. Has your experience in the field changed your mind about the medical care system? You have experience doing nursing. How has that shifted your experience to where you're going now in midwifery?
I think maybe sometimes just like recognizing that, that like humans are just humans, and like mistakes just like naturally happen, and like using that as a learning instead of like using it as like a punishment. Or even when I've like been in places like teaching non-Indigenous peoples about how, not people, they're not nations, but like teaching non-Indigenous about like how to make things more safe or how to make things more comfortable. that like sometimes it takes like a gentle like approach, and sometimes it's not always like you did this wrong and like, you know, you're a bad person. Sometimes it's like, no, it's like you did this wrong and like you can learn and you have like the way to learn. But I find like even for me, sometimes when I start making mistakes, like yeah, a lot of those like narratives can be like, you did wrong, like you hurt someone, like this or this and that. Maybe not even like a medically hurt someone, but like maybe didn't make someone feel the best. And like I do tend to take that seriously because it's important for me not to do that. But then just being like, I will make mistakes and I'll learn from them, and like just taking like a different approach to that. I wasn't really sure about the question there, but I think just like, yeah, like sometimes people learn like in a way that's like more comfortable or more safe, not when your nervous system's so like lit up and activated.
Yeah.
And that's now like kind of how I try to meet myself and how I try to meet people who are just like on the learning journey, because people don't know what they don't know, and no one learns best through punishment. And that's like the old kind of like ways of like shifting out of like our like millennial kind of generation in like our childhood, and like how intergenerational trauma gets really mixed in with that, and how like the punishment systems, meanwhile punishment was never something that is innately Indigenous. Like we never were so harsh to kids. We saw kids as such like beautiful gifts from the earth, and like all of our teachings throughout that. And yeah, kind of like shifting away from that mentality and being like, what is a colonial influence that's changing the way I am and changing the way that actually really isn't me and doesn't feel like me, and just creates shame, and also just creates shame for non-Indigenous people and for Indigenous people too. It's like we sometimes can benefit, like in a way, like we benefit from shaming ourselves sometimes, because I'm like, I got to this point and I said that if I was like took a day off, then like whatever, that it's not the best. But sometimes now it's like, okay, not using that lens and being like, I took a day off. It's okay. It's healthy to take a day off, and being better for it.
Dude, shame is like a natural human emotion and reaction to things. Like the reason I'm this is just me rambling now, but like the reason we do correct, like if we do make mistakes, maybe we did make someone feel bad emotionally or whatever, the shame we feel off of that is what course corrects you. Some people don't feel that in any sense, which is how they continue on as they are, maybe emotionally hurting, maybe not even aware that they're hurting others' feelings or like taking up space or whatever. So I feel like it's a perfectly good natural emotion, but you are right. It's kind of ingrained in the community to some degree. It's that it's been going for generations. It's being passed down. It's being passed around, and I don't like that term of like fighting fire with fire. We can't fight shame with more shame. That'll never. That's not a course correction. Like we need to uplift and we need to make people feel confidence, not make them, but help them feel confidence. That's a great, it's a great approach to life, and you want to see your kids grow up, or any of the children, the youth, with the confidence and understand that shame's a natural part of the course correction. It's a natural part of the feeling. So there's like certain things that I believe in, like the emotional spectrum. It's like those who want to feel joy or don't want to feel this, it's all kind of part of it. And I understand it's so difficult because we can get stuck in them, but I think there's a reason for some of them.
Yeah. And you can benefit from it. Like I was, it's like sometimes you just get into these patterns without knowing about it. And you're like, well, I've like done well up to this point. I've like told myself I have to study or else this won't happen. But then sometimes now it's just being like, oh, I can take the time. And I feel like even the wellness journey is one that just like keeps keeps going, and like it really does have its like ups and downs, but even like wellness in an aspect of school, like I always, like now when I'm in the thick of school, I start to like think about even wellness as an aspect of my medicine wheel. Like it's not just like these like parts, it's like it takes up a decent part of the triangle and has to be in balance with resting and has to be in balance with nature and these things that like make up myself, versus just like easily eclipse the whole wheel sometimes if I'm like, nope, I just need to sit down and study. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
when's lunch? Like, when's your snacks?
Yeah.
And like, when are those things that help fuel you? And even like taking time to take a day off here and there, taking time to like, you know, go out and enjoy a walk or go out with friends. I found even for sure, like I didn't do much of that in my first undergrad, but like when I started doing that in my master's, I started like excelling way more. And it was almost confusing because I was like, how am I doing so much better, but I'm taking time off? And it was like, because my spirit needs that, because we're just spirits here at the end of the day. And like physically, we can get just like boggled down by things, or we can get like burned out. And like kind of like that side of, I know what it feels like not to be myself, and how can I work towards being myself, even if it means taking a time to cry or taking a time to like, you know, like we were talking about earlier, it's like being in nature, like how that is so important.
Yeah, dude, burnout is a very real thing. And I think after many, many years of schooling, what are some tips just for wellness that you would give to others? Like, I've done a little bit of post-secondary, and I did some mentoring there where you interact with other students, and whatever terms you want to call it, like what is it? Big fish in a small pond, small fish in a giant pond, and like leaving a small community and coming to the urban center, or like just like education itself can, like, that leads to strong burnout sometimes. Like it's very easy to do so, and some people thrive in that, like as you said, study, and like there's no rest in between, and there's some success up that ladder. But so if you were to guide or help give any helpful words to anybody else in their journey in school, what would you tell them about wellness and maintaining that during their educational journey?
A few things come to mind like right away with that, or things that I'm like, oh, I would need this, and like I've needed this and it has been beneficial. But I think it's so important that we see roles and like we see like representation, and we have that kind of like reflected back to us. And I think the value of mentorship really is so important, and having a mentor that you can kind of like be yourself around. I find people want to help and like people want to give back, and that feels so, it doesn't feel right when it feels like you're the one taking, being like, I need this support, and they're like, I want to give you this support, and it's like a gift of like that vulnerability coming back. So I definitely think like reaching out like and having a mentor or having someone that you really like trust to like share with the journey. Like I used to think that like sharing too much would just like overburden someone, and it would just be like, okay, like settle down, like you're fine. But having like being able to share those truths and feel like and connect and have that kind of support, I think that can be like one of the most helpful things like along the journey. And even sometimes like as a mentor myself, and like mentor to like different people, and also like that relationship aspect of it, is I like giving too. Like I feel good when I'm giving and being like helpful, like even just something like this, like giving advice. It's like, oh, it feels good for me, but also like wanting to have that like, so because it's easy to just be like, oh no, I don't want to like show anyone that like I'm struggling or it's hard, but that is kind of where kind of connection happens.
Yeah. Dude, vulnerability. It's kind of a key.
Ah!
It's kind of a key aspect.
It's
like
hard.
absolutely doing things that you don't feel ready or unwilling to do, but it does get rewards. You kind of have to be uncomfortable just a little bit. Like that's how you get the help. And I love that you say like I am willing to help and I am willing to be there to help because you have such great experience and
receiving it.
Yeah, but sometimes we get a little shy and it's like, oh, I don't want to burn like she's in her third year of school and like this and that, but it's not like it's not like a burden.
Yeah, and we're like made to connect. Like we're just so social in every way. Like even our brain is adapted to social. Our minds are like so pretty much just by being able to connect, you are just I don't even know.
That's okay. No. Don't worry. No, this
is what was I saying?
This is also why we have editors.
Okay.
Yeah, so this won't fly like this. Trust me, it'll look natural. Yeah, but we're just talking about not that it burdens, but the connections made, especially during difficult times, which like academia, school, even work, anything that's to do with progressing or surviving this modern world or reality is tough, and we do need help. It feels like we're part of such an individualistic society and things like that when it's not a natural aspect to this Western world, as mentioned before, because I'm like. An example I've been thinking about too is just I'm, as mentioned earlier, I'm expecting triplets, and I've seen a lot of burnout in parents of multiples, twins, triplets, quadruplets, and anything like that. And in my head, naturally, it goes, well, we need extra hands. We need extra help. So my parents are now currently living with me, which also is one of those weird things in whatever world we're living in currently, where it's like, dude's in his 30s still living with his parents. Yes, I am.
Yes.
I only have two hands and there's three kids there. Like,
of course.
Yeah, dude. And like, so in my head, naturally, it just made sense.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple head tilts as to like, oh, you're choosing to live with your parents and you're almost 40, which is, it sounds like a weird statement just by like, if we watch media or if we listen to the modernistic world.
Right.
But I'm a huge believer in community. I'm a huge believer in the past generations still continuing. Like my grandparents still live on through my parents, and my parents will be there to help me. And now it's like very generational thing. They're gonna be there, and it's gonna continue on with them. So
owning it,
dude,
owning it, because that is, any kind of thing that's really making you feel like that. Like, sometimes like, people like think down on that or like, that those aspects, like, yeah, it can be hurtful, but in another way, it's like, well, that is like a truth. Like that's a truth of your nation. And that's a truth that like long existed before we were just constantly surrounded by buildings or constantly in a way that didn't nurture the most like protection,
Dude, I think about like just because of the current state I'm in, I always think about like the different world and roles that were like a couple generations ago, especially in things like community and pregnancy and birth and all of that. Like it was a community aspect. It was a whole like everybody pitched in and got involved. Do you have any role models that kind of helped inspire you or guide you or lead you to kind of where you are today?
I feel like, yeah, most definitely. I feel like I'm community made. I'm like friendship made, friendship supported, and definitely like mentorship supported throughout the journey, and just like being able to connect with people as I was really going through it. I found like in my undergrad that things were really supported by like the Indigenous programs and services at the time, and like making community that way. And like I came from like my perspective, and I came from like Saskatchewan, like where I was, but then also like being able to like meet people of other nations and see the struggles that they've had and hear about them. And like sometimes like it can be like really frustrating when there is like that racism, or there is like that those aspects of like not understanding, because it's like that's not just towards me, that's not just towards my community, that's towards like my friends, and that's like towards like people I deeply care about. And Indigenous people really do like deeply, like we deeply care about each other, we deeply like value each other. And sometimes when that kind of hits a nerve and gets us all fired up and like, excuse me, what did he say, or just like so just like frustrated, that it comes from a place of like value for people. And it comes from a place of even in healthcare, seeing, oh, I think like this person deserved to be like treated like better in a way, and them not being treated better, like decreased access. And not only for them, like decreased access like for their families, because we talk and we tell stories and we know like safety. And that's kind of like the mission, is to be able to be a person that's like in that. And like, I feel like just learning so much from my mentors and books and reading and like I love like the academic side of things. Like I love Indigenous artists. And even when I was going and like really thinking seriously about nursing, I was like really disappointed that I couldn't just be writing essays about Billy Ray Belcourt and like these amazing Indigenous academics that I'm like, wow, you're so powerful. Like not only did I not know you, but I learned from you. Or like these amazing books that I'm like, wow, we have such access to books and memoirs and all these things.
Yeah, dude, that's transcendent. That's like stuff that this is also why I keep going back to like old world versus new. I love reading too, and reading like even hearing stories from my parents' generation, it's a different world. Mm-hmm. Like we're at such an accelerated pace, but to see these these conditions and how different the world is, and like how upfront everything was kind of in the old day, meaning like racism, colonialism, and all those discussions that have been had. Like it's shifted so much in I don't want to call it power. Power is not a good word for it, but it's shifted the dynamic of it. Meaning like I feel better now knowing that there's going to be midwifery work and nursing work with people like you. I feel better going into the medical care system, knowing that there's people younger than me who want to be part of this and make us feel safe and make us feel, because as I said, I've read stories and heard stories even from like my grandparents' generation, my parents' generation, and it kind of just breaks my heart, the treatment, which is still very much present in today's realm, today's world. But I feel better when I know that there's people who want to make it better.
And just there's such a special way about even thinking towards like more Indigenous people of all ages being involved. And part of the reason why I was like, oh, I'd love to like go on a podcast and even like talk a little bit more about like midwifery and talk about like that primary care provider role of like being able to work in clinics with families, being able to know them their whole pregnancy, being able to be them for such a medicine time of their birth, and then following them along with their children for 6 weeks. Like just I would love to see more people in that role. And like, it takes time to get there. And some people don't even know like those roles exist and don't really know about like the program or didn't consider it because they wouldn't see themselves in it. But even more so recently with funding from like whatever government structure, they're pushing for more midwives to be able to like lead the like role for in birth and like in labor management. And yeah, there's such a need there. There's a need for protecting birth in Indigenous communities. There's a need for urban Indigenous people and having them like be supported in a culturally safe way. There's a need for more research to also acknowledge how some bodies are different than other bodies, and we're like sometimes even pelvises are different, and that's all based on like sometimes one way of being. So I just think there's such a need for it. There's such a need for more perspectives. And part of it was like the reason why I did my master's before going into midwifery, because I want to be able to advocate for policy when I start noticing things that are different and can be like made a little bit better.
Dude, medicine. Good medicine.
Aw, thank you.
Yeah. We're reshaping medicine. We're making it indigenized. We're making it ours. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Good medicine. Being medicine for each other too. As we come to a slow close here, I was just wondering if you had any specific message for the Indigenous community, youth, whether it be about starting their educational path or in their educational path, or about midwifery, anything you'd like to, any message to anyone, what would you like to say to the...
I would just say that in any aspect of like any career, if you choose like academia, or if you choose even the value of traditional ways of learning and hunting, that there's always a place and there's always like space for that connection, always space to take time for yourself and like really value the rest. Because sometimes like we can feel ourselves burning out, and it actually can take so much longer to recover from burnout if you're not just like being in it. And it is so hard to like be in those emotions, and sometimes we're just trained in society to really run from them. But just being who you are in whatever aspect you choose, because there's just out there. And then finding people to support you, because I feel like even with midwifery school, I've been so supported by my preceptors, by my mentors, that's like the only way I'm like really like getting through, because it's really hard. Like it's a lot of like in-depth learning and just needing that support myself. So I know that others need it, and I'm also being like, oh, I've received it, I can also give it. Yeah.
Dude, keeping your cup full and helping fill other cups. It's a beautiful way to live. Thank you so much for joining us today, Violet. We appreciate you hopping on the Culture Bites podcast, joining the Indigenous Youth Wellness team. It's so great having you do the work and be part of the community. So we just like to thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to chatting with you next time.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Take care, everyone.